Party hopping is an exercise of freedom of association. This is not something that the government should have the power to regulate, but it's not just about freedom of association. MPs have a responsibility to their constituents. They represent the constituents, not just the party. I do agree with this user that there will be a lot of grey areas. Like, the limit of legal language is such that we cannot exhaustively lay down every single instance where MP leave. r.age already gained momentum and likely to pass. What happened if recall petition didn't give full approval? It will only benefit the frog's absurd situation. Because if we could recall what had happened in the past few years, r.age laws that have been proposed by the government simply do not deal with this situation or prevent it from happening. Hi, my name is Sin Yew. I'm a lawyer. I've practiced constitutional law for 11 years. This is my expert opinion. So the government's proposed anti-party hopping law is very simple actually. It says that if you are a MP or if you are an adun and you resign from the party, or you get sacked by the party, or you stop becoming a member of that party, your seat becomes vacant. It's a misnomer to call it an anti-party hopping law. It's more of a, if you leave the party law, you get punished. It doesn't solve the problem, it's not descriptive. You know, it's a bit misleading if you ask me. It's a bit disingenuous of how it's being presented, as though as it's the solution to all our problems in politics. It's not. In Sheraton Move, under the existing anti-hopping law, it could not have been prevented because it was a situation where an entire party left the coalition. So it doesn't solve Sheraton Move, and it penalizes conscientious MPs, if I could just name some, Syed Saddiq or Masli Malik, because as we know it, they did not want to be associated with leaving or betraying the People's Mandate by leaving the PH coalition, which they got elected on using PKR's flag in the 14th January election. So under the anti-party hopping law that was proposed by the government, these MPs, because Bersatu had sacked them or terminated their membership, they too would lose their seat, even though what they had done by not wanting to be part of what the party is doing is arguably in line with the People's Mandate. Greatest beneficiary from this anti-party hopping law that's proposed by the government is actually the political parties. Political parties now will have greater control over their MPs and their aduns, because their MPs and their aduns will be very scared. Say, oh, I dare not dissent. If I dissent, I might get sacked by my political party, and if I get sacked, I might lose my seat. So representative democracy as a whole, it's eroded. It's best to just go back to the people and ask themselves. Ask them that. Let them ask themselves whether we want to recall this MP who may be part of a party that had left the coalition as a whole. I think they are the best deciders. So that's recall petition in very simple terms. The difference, of course, is that anti-party hopping makes that seat vacant automatically. But with recall petition, for that seat to be vacant, for a replacement to be elected, there is a process to go through, whereby the voters would have to agree, or a number of them have to agree.
The tool is important because it empowers citizens, and many citizens, we can observe that in many countries, they are unsatisfied with representative democracy because they feel like they have no power over their representatives, that they can just select them and then they have to wait for 5 years to be empowered again. And the recall empowers them continuously. You can find these mechanisms in Germany, you find it in Romania, where in 2012, I think, the president was recalled. What we can see across countries is that people are satisfied with having this option. It empowers people. A negative effect is when the recall is systematically used by the opposition to contest the result of elections. If it's systematic, if the losers always use it to contest the result of elections, then it's quite bad, because then representatives, they spend their time campaigning rather than governing, and also it creates a kind of, it can increase polarization and the tensions between the opposition and the ruling party or parties. So one thing you can do to avoid a kind of constant use of the mechanism is a high threshold of signatures. So it's only when there is a high dissatisfaction when you can convince many citizens to sign that the initiative will pass. That's one thing. You can have a restricted list of acceptable justifications, motivations for the recall. You can have an external body examining these motivations. You can also have a kind of fair trial, allowing the representative subject to recall to defend his or her job. The recall is a way of empowering citizens, but it gives citizens only a negative power just to contest when they're unhappy. And I think it's also desirable to have mechanisms that allow citizens to bring more positive contributions. So typically, the right of initiative, which allows citizens to initiate a law process, a legislative process, and then either their recommendation is taken up by the parliament or it leads to a popular referendum. That's something that I think is worth considering as well.
A lot have said, oh, let's not do recall petition. It's so complicated. People won't understand it. They are underestimating the people. And there are so many other things in the Constitution that is far more complicated. Look at your delineation. There's a delineation process, and the entire process is laid down in the Constitution. And that requires engagement with the people. It may be costly, it may be messy, I don't disagree, but democracy is messy and it can be costly, but it's worth every single penny. So suddenly, going back to the voting booth is something that is so otherworldly that common voters like you and me won't understand. I think, it's the 2022. I think Malaysians are much smarter than politicians think they are. I think politicians should stop underestimating Malaysians.